Hello, it's me, Ashley, with Archetype, sponsored by Lenovo. And here we are. We are now going to be getting into 3D. So just to kind of recap stuff that we did last week, let me see if I can drag my reference over here. Yes, we kind of blocked out this character, and I went ahead and did like a really quick kind of sketch on top of the stuff that we already did last week, just to see if I could find some interesting shape languages and designs. And I also went around and gathered some reference of stuff that I personally think could be cool for our character. So again, it's kind of like a Dervish character, which means he, is kind of super quick and agile, along with his fighting style being really unique. And kind of very much a core part of his character. And so, we kind of came up with the idea of, maybe he lost his ability to, move his arms, so maybe he swings stuff around. But even then, if he doesn't do that, he also would still have like a really unique kind of moveset, just because he has these four limbs that, he slices and dices and things. And then, so my reference is like post-apocalyptic, kind of like the grunge or the vibe that I want to go for. These little maquettes are really awesome. I've always loved, these real world materials on top of these really cool, crazy kit bash shapes and stuff. Along with some of my favorite mech designers and whatnot, along with some real world reference to see, how does hydraulic stuff work, where do joints go, and things like that. I personally am not like a huge mech designer. I like keeping my stuff fairly organic, which is why I like, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, Nirvana Chanthra, I think is Chanthara. You could look him up. He's an amazing mech designer and just all around really good artist. But I love his shape language that he has in his mech designs. And then again, one of the things that we thought would be kind of fun last week was making this character maybe like affect sound, and having like cool sound barrier. But on top of that, I actually really like these shapes that you can find depending on what hertz they have on these Chinlati plates. So I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a weird pronunciation, but it's these cool plates that show, the visualization of sound. But we can play with, I was looking at this in particular and was like, oh, that could be, maybe what his head shape could go on to, so maybe there's a lot of radial symmetry almost, in his patterns later on as we start sculpting and things like that. So, take it as like shape reference as well. We can look up, different patterns at different hertz and see if we come up with cool shape language and design that we can kind of utilize. So that's kind of where my thought process is. But, this round of iteration is probably going to be more of just blocking in the shapes and starting to sculpt out, something interesting, and getting those shapes down. So we'll go ahead and dive in and get to it. And the way I would approach, mech stuff is kind of similar to how I approach any character work, with getting those blockouts first, getting those big shapes first, and seeing what we can find. Maybe using a bit more of a polish type brush or something like that later on. But for now, I just kind of want to block in parts, and that'll be kind of the goal. And hinting into, shapes and stuff. And you could approach it the same as you do like a human skeleton, where you go, okay, what's the underlying structure? How does this character move within the mass that he has? Because there's kind of like the skeletal structure, like the joints and stuff. But there's also, all the armor and protective layering that goes on top, So if you wanted to, you could definitely block out that first exterior or interior structure first, and then go ahead and, add cool stuff on top. Kind of depends on how organic you want it to be. But we're gonna steer pretty far away from what we did. Oops. It merged, so just note that if you don't want it to merge, but you want to keep them in the same subtool, just turn on groups. There we go. We'll be continuing to explore and find fun shapes and stuff. And again, I'll be looking at my reference for cool ideas as to what, you know, could be there. But yeah, I just want to block in, you know, if its head moves around a little bit, you know, I want to make sure that there's some room in there for maybe where his head and neck actually is. Again, we don't need to constrain and stick to human anatomy at all. We just want to make sure that it has some sort of form of mobility, you know, and maybe later on I can decide, oh, maybe he doesn't have a neck and he has to turn his whole body in order to look around at stuff. And he maybe only, you know, kind of has like a tiny little hinge joint that he can move around. But that's stuff that we can always play with once we get, you know, the blocking going. And I also have he has a cool little hood and stuff later on. So we'll play with that as well. Again, I'll be focusing on just trying to get the silhouette going first, and then we can start detailing and finding cool shapes from there. Because until I can, you know, block out all this stuff, I can't really read the relationships that all these have yet until you get that idea going first and getting all those shapes. So again, it's the same process as, you know, any sort of other character and stuff. You can start really, really blocky and then build from there. And if you're also watching in the chat, say hi. I always like seeing people and saying hi. Yeah, I'll just be, again, my process for this stuff is always just taking what I have and reusing and moving and remeshing, or redynameshing and making sure that they all stay nice separate groups. Hello, Wookie from YouTube. How's it going? Right now I'm using also the move topological to move individual shapes. And then, you know, if I want to move something as a whole, I can just go into the move. That's kind of the nice part about being able to keep all these together but separate, is I can iterate on one piece, you know, for a little bit within the whole and then continue making stuff. Ooh, first time catching one live. Hello. Coco Loco Loco, whatever, whatever your name is. I always love seeing internet names. You guys always challenge me. Grab a cup of coffee with me and hang out. Welcome to the channel. Yeah, joining these live is always really fun. Well, one, it's fun for me because then I have people to talk to. But then on top of that, you basically get a free lesson of just ask whatever questions you want to yours truly. I don't bite and I can't bite you from across the internet, so that also works to your advantage. But yeah, I'm here to answer everybody's questions of what they want to learn or what they're into, or if they have ideas for a character or whatever it may be. It's really an open conversation for everybody, which is kind of the fun part. So just blocking in the legs. So I have it where he's gonna have like kind of double jointed legs. Because in mechs it helps a lot. If any of you guys build Gundam kits, you guys know that there's usually kind of like two knees that help bend the knee more properly. It's also pretty common in like dolls and stuff for articulation. It allows for more flexibility. So I'm gonna try to make sure that I kind of add that. So I'm a big fan of Evangelion and Gundam type work, so a lot of my mech stuff will probably be very heavily inspired from that to begin with. I love kind of like and again, it's why I also really like Chanthara. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Work, because it's also super organic, which is what I really like about his work. I'm not about like super technical, you know, what could be a real life mech. I kind of like playing with shapes and ideas more. Oh, hello, Synth. You're looking for I was looking for you on Twitch, but hello. Nice to see you as always. Buddy Synth in the house. Thank you. Will be an interesting one. Again, it's not that I mean, I don't do mechs all that often, but I'm not afraid of doing mechs, but we're kind of, it'll be fun because we're steering really far from what our style last time was. So it'll be kind of interesting to see where we go with this design and like with this character. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun. Just walking in, trying to smooth this out so I can move this down. I'm looking at the character as a whole, seeing where that balance is going to be also will be important. I'll have to move his whole body back a little bit probably, because he'll be bouncing on these like crazy little pogos basically. It's kind of the idea. So just blocking in those fun shapes. I'm also trying to play a lot with the idea of big, medium, small. So, you know, if his thigh is really big, then maybe this like double hinge joint will be small, and then maybe this shape will be the medium shape, you know, and playing around with those ideas because it adds them for a more interesting proportion in design when you're thinking about big, medium, small shapes. And this stage will also, you know, for this stream, we'll probably be just heavily focusing on silhouette and trying to carve out maybe some ideas and details and not get anything too crazy. I'm going to go ahead and mirror and weld. It's always important to mirror and weld to see where this actually kind of lines up. Because I want to now kind of like spread his legs apart a little bit more. There we go. So you can feel a little bit more balanced. Synth is asking if I use ZModeler for met parts. I do. I definitely do. It can be really helpful. We're also going to probably be getting into, you know, some fun Boolean stuff as well. For blockout stages, I always like to try to just do, you know, some blobby Dynamesh stuff, just because I want to be able to play with shapes without spending too long on shapes. So it's always really nice to be able to, you know, kill my darlings quickly, right? Because I haven't spent that long on any of these parts. With ZModeler, if you go too early into it, you may not want to push and pull shapes as much as if you were, you know, just, you know, mishmashing some stuff around and sculpting some stuff first. So it's always good to kind of like approach it with a plan and then, yeah, dive in with like ZModeler. Coco Loco is asking, would I suggest learning how to draw as much as possible before sculpting? Yes and no. So I wouldn't say you want to learn how to draw before getting into sculpting. I do think, however, it's really important to get into drawing to better your sculpts. You're always going to be improving both. So it's not really a matter of which one to get into first. It's more of constantly playing and, you know, adapting to new mediums more than anything else that I think is the most helpful. Because tackling things like silhouette and design is a lot easier to do in, you know, 2D, which is why in this stream I actually, you know, I always start with a sketch and we go into drawing stuff first. And it may not be the prettiest sketches, you know, sometimes I've finished stuff and like finished coloring, but for this one I really didn't. We just kind of have this sketch to go off of, which gives me enough of an idea of shapes and ideas, right? But there's a lot that we can still play with, but I'm not starting in 3D. And I think for a lot of people, especially beginners, I could probably start mech designing in 3D and that's fine. But I also have a lot of experience in the industry at this point and a lot of 3D experience. But I still, even with all that experience, I like to separate the two because I force myself to push more with a drawing than sometimes in 3D, or vice versa, you know. So they kind of can help in both ways. Because for something like this, it's really easy to go, oh, okay, what if I, you know, made this really, really long or like pulled this out super far, and see like what does that do to the silhouette? Oh, I didn't have symmetry on, so it got all wonky. But, you know, you can kind of like really push shape sometimes, or to go, you know, like how wide can I make this? Can I make this like really wide? You know, like that could be kind of interesting. Because again, in our 2D, we didn't really look at depth-wise, you know, what he would feel like. Is he going to feel like really top-heavy? And I would think so because his arms need to be able to spin out around from his hips and stuff. So again, playing with like a cool big, medium, small of like, yeah, his upper torso is going to be pretty big and his upper half is going to be big. Whereas he'll kind of narrow out in the hips, you know, and get really small in the limbs and stuff. So yeah, we could definitely play more with that. And for the arms, I'm just going to draw out some tubes because that's kind of what they are. So no point in doing a you know, a blobby Dynamesh if I can just draw out a cylinder. You know, and you can adjust the size intensity, so I can turn on size and I can flip this. So that way when I touch this now, they thin out, but that's obviously a little too much. I'm having shaky coffee hands that don't want me to. There we go. Something maybe more like that. And I can lock these so I can move this around and kind of pull this down. Unlock the end. It's feel a little easier to move. Get down here. Trying to find good size. You know, and it could be interesting to play with more of this, these size modifiers. They could maybe get a little smaller. And they could stay kind of thick at the top and thin out in different ways. Kind of play with that. Drag out another one. So we can start getting our silhouette. Kind of moving this around a little bit. I'm trying to be nice about it. I want it to feel kind of clean. And also, I'd want the silhouette to kind of, maybe this can come out a bit more, and then maybe I can curve this a bit more. Oh yeah, I'm always going to be bringing back those Evangelion memories. I'm a big fan of the Evangelion, so anything to do that, I probably will. I'm going to go ahead and split this because I don't want it to get Dynameshed. And now I can work with these kind of separately. Yeah, if we want to. I mean, I think before, prior to, you know, with the sketch, I even took, at one point my sketch had, you know, like the big classic, like horn shape. So we could play with something like that if we wanted to, you know, and see what that would look like. For me, I'm debating whether I like that or not because he's got a hood. So yeah. Oh, Gurren Lagann is good too. If you guys can, I don't know if you guys can see it, but I have a Gurren Lagann model kit that I did sitting on my desk. I don't mind the little pointiness though. Pointiness could be kind of cool. I still always want to still try to capture, you know, good gesture and silhouette with this stuff too. Try to make sure that we're feeling out the character properly. You know, is it cool if he's got like a really long torso? Does that make sense? Is that interesting? You know, feels kind of bug-like. He gets very insectoid at that point, which could be something we could play with. All a matter of what we want to play with and what we don't want to play with. Trying to see how I kind of want his head to fit into this little area. I also have, we didn't do it last time, but I drew little extra arms. So I was like, oh, well, if he has, you know, saw hand blades, he needs something he could kind of like grab. But I was like, oh, it'd be funny if they're like really tiny. So they're not super useful, but they're just useful enough. But he can't do like a whole lot with them. I think that could be kind of fun. So we'll play with that. Oh, Saito, hello. I recognize your name. Nice to see you in the chat. Stretch this out. Another cool trick too, if you don't want to like copy or you know, if it's easier to work with like less shapes, you can auto group. You can stretch this out really far. So if I want to make like a little arm, for example, I can Dynamesh it this way. But if I want it to later, you know, get split or whatever, you can kind of warp it a little bit into shape, and I can select this thing, and I'm gonna hide this part, and I'll mask it, and I can grab this part, you know, and I can polygroup that part. And then because I have groups on for Dynamesh, it'll split them all into separate parts. So now I can move them around separately. So if that works easier for you, you know, that's also another method besides just grabbing and, you know, hitting control and dragging those out. You can do some. Oh my god, look at the little hand. It looks funny. I love it. If I can make myself laugh while sculpting, God, I'm happy to do that. Makes me happy. We'll bring it down, make it not look super silly, maybe. Try to figure out where this would go. And you have a grasshopper. Yeah, grasshopper is that'd be really cool reference, actually. You know, that's the cool thing is, you know, if you start modeling something, you're like, ooh, this reminds me of, you know, grasshopper or this or that. Totally look up that reference and start looking at, you know, the shape language of all those things to help, you know, flesh out your character even more. We have a random technical question from Kevin. Do I ever find myself using ZSpheres or know anybody that does? Yeah, I use ZSpheres all the time. Actually, a really great example for a ZSphere, and I can even demo it right now for a block-in, is I actually like to make frames out of it. So in our concept, we have a frame. Let me solo this and see where it is. You know, so if I want to build like a frame from this, for example, I can build one side of it. So I'll make it a little bigger. Oops. I can drag this out. I have symmetry turned on. Drag this out. It's easier to make your brush smaller to deal with this stuff. And I like to usually put where I want it to go because it's easier for me to solo it and hit Q to then like add points. And then I can move the points. So I can do something like that and drag this out. You know, if I want it to insert into here, I can hit Q again and build this out. So you can build like a cool little frame like really quickly this way, which I find pretty handy. So yeah, I like still, there's certain things with ZRemesh. Hands are also really nice to be able to build with it. I can drag that out. I can mirror and weld it later. I'm not too worried about not being able to do that. But yeah, you can build something like that, and when you hit A, you can look at you know, the adaptive mesh. By default, you can see it's really heavy. I don't know why, it's so silly. They do this thing where you go to adaptive skin, they have the Dynamesh turned on by default, which kind of defeats the purpose of doing a ZSphere in my opinion, because you kind of like it because it'll create good topology. So I always put that to 0 and I put the density to 1. So now you get something like that, which is far closer to what I want. I can go ahead and make this smaller so that way the frame feels kind of even throughout. You know, if you want to have it be an even frame, you can have something like that. And then you can say make adaptive skin. It doesn't look like it does anything, but it always is going to put it in a separate tool. And then I can insert that into my scene. So I can go ahead and bring that in. Boop. And now I have, you know, basically like a frame. And then this part here, I can just do a mirror and weld. Something like that. If I wanted to, what I would probably really do is auto group this, delete this side, and then I can just make sure that I move this side over a little bit and then run a mirror and weld just so it's a little smoother. And you can kind of like clean that up later. You could stitch that together. But yeah, you can get, you know, pretty easy little like block-in wireframe like pretty quickly. So I do like using it for that method. I think it's super handy. I'll hide it for now because I haven't quite figured out, you know, the other shapes. So I think because his biceps really small, it gives him kind of like T-Rex arm vibes, which looks kind of silly. That's why I'm laughing at it, right? So, you know, an easy way to fix that is I'm going to drag this down and I can drag out his bicep, his what would be basically like his little biceps. I can make them feel a little bit more normal proportioned. And that should help a little bit. And for you know, hard surfacing, obviously the polishing brush is going to be kind of your best friend for a lot of this stuff, to see if you can find cool surfaces and, you know, flattening out, you know, shapes and finding creasing. and things like that. And then of course on top, even at this stage, you could, you know, start blocking in what would be some, you know, some scribe lines and stuff, and trying to figure out where all that breakup's gonna go. Again, it's always for scribe lines and stuff, it's important to look at real world references. But you know, if we look up, I can't even do it right now, look up a grasshopper, because somebody in the chat mentioned oh my gosh, my internet, like a grasshopper. So if I can look at, you know, the top of one or the back of one or something like that, I might be able to find some cool reference as to, you know, how's their exoskeleton look, or like what are the shapes of a grasshopper that could be kind of interesting, and see if I can kind of play with those shapes and see how, you know, how's that creature segmented and how's that thing move and whatnot. So if I'm looking at that, it is kind of cool. They have these types of segments first, but then they have this really cool big kind of like wing shape, which again, if we wanted to, we could take something like that and we could extract it. So we could take this wing shape we could do an extract. You know, we could create some cool plating or something that way too, and start creating some layering. I think layering for your mechs and stuff is pretty important. Do an auto group because we have stuff that we don't need in this. Yeah, we can start kind of blocking that stuff out. And I will take this stuff. So what's also really nice is if you're not really big into drawing the perspective of mechs and things, you can take something like this and, you know, take a screen grab of it and then go into Photoshop or Procreate, whatever your poison of choice is, and kind of start drawing on top of it to see if you can find anything of interest, you know, in the 2D realm first before going in and adding like a bunch of, you know, crazy detail into stuff. So I think things like that could be, you know, really handy. So just looking at, I want to look at the sound reference again and see if I can find something kind of fun within those shapes that could be interesting for maybe the design of his head. It's interesting because there's like 4 main shapes, and then there's like these cool cylindricals on the side. So we could maybe play with that. And again, you can see how low res it is right now. But just playing with, by, you know, just picking that as a shape language, I don't have to make them all like eyeballs, but immediately I can start getting breakup that, you know, is gonna feel nice because I'm referencing something that's existing. I'm referencing something that's in nature, you know, it's the vibrations of sound that are, you know, creating that shape. And so being able to kind of reference stuff like that is gonna be really fun. I'm gonna delete this for now because I don't really know what I want yet. But yeah, we can start, you know, sculpting on top of some stuff. And it'll be important later too to look up, you know, some mechanical things and whatnot and see what makes sense for this character. But for now, we can just kind of reference and put in shapes that we think will be interesting to start with. I think it'd be cool if you could see like a some sort of like mechanical spine or something, you know? I mean, that's very Evangelion too, right? Is creating some cool mechanical spine type stuff. You can sculpt them where you're like, oh, maybe there'll be like a piston here, or maybe a piston that goes like this, and it's like a big hydraulics type system up in the front. Or maybe there's a big piston that kind of goes like there. And it's really more about just getting in some ideas first before you go, okay, I'm gonna model this thing now. Because you really want to make sure that everything that you have is more solidified into, you know, some final ideas and whatnot. I think I want to make this feel more connected. Just playing with pushing and pulling shapes to find interesting stuff. Oh, since saying it reminds you of some Horizon Zero Dawn critters. Yeah, definitely. I think that anything that's going to feel, you know, kind of organic mechanical will definitely be reminded of stuff like that. Blocking is big. He's got this big knee pad type thing that I want to add. Again, this is the part too where you can, like, what I kind of modeled in would be considered kind of like the exoskeleton. So maybe we can start adding some shapes that are going to feel more like his armor or things like that. And just start blocking in these types of shapes. Grab these. And see if we can, you know, sharpen up some areas or find, you know, where would be the kneecap kind of area. And I would want like a center line kind of down the middle of it. This is where you can kind of start carving some shapes and stuff and try to find something that works for you. And in my initial concept, I have a lot of ideas of maybe making, I have his jaw that comes out a little farther, so I think that would be kind of cooler. Also playing with maybe the proportions of that. And pinch that up a little bit. It's pretty Evangelion looking now. That's cool. That never hurt anybody, right? It's all about just trying to find something that's fun. And a lot of this is just going to be playing around with scribes and seeing, you know, what, you know, what's going to be covered in cloth, for example, versus what's going to be exposed. I like putting a lot of stuff in cloth, one, because it's easier. You don't have to worry about all the mechy neck stuff. But also adds, it actually does add, on top of that, it adds a lot of visual breakup as well to your character. So, you know, I think it might be cool to have these arms kind of covered in some fabric type stuff. And then, you know, maybe the other ones will be far more mechanical and weird and more detailed in that sense. You know, maybe for his leg there might be something more interesting. Oh, I think Zintoki is bringing up an interesting point that they're like really tiny, I believe, which could be interesting. I think that would be a lot of fun. I'm also going to put in a little ball and socket, which just means inserting a sphere at this point. I think silhouette-wise, I think that's pretty fun as far as what we're, you know, kind of accomplishing and getting. But obviously now it's kind of time to like refine all these shapes because they're just kind of blobs and not super interesting yet. And that's where with a mech, it's actually, you know, we can sculpt this on, it's not really about sculpting this all at once. It's easier for me to work with when it's all separate and things. But now might be a better idea to split all these off into their separate parts and kind of start modeling things individually and see where we get, you know, and see what we can find in those shapes. So I can easily now just say, well, first I'm probably going to auto group it and then do a mirror and weld. So that way, when you do a poly split, all the things that are, you know, symmetrical will stay together. If you do an auto group and then split it, you'll get a right side and a left side, which is not very fun. So I'll do split and I'll say group split. There we go. Because now I want to work on, like, for example, you know, I just want to work on the thigh piece and see, you know, what I can come up with as far as maybe what that could potentially look like for reference and stuff. So gonna find some. Whoops, keep a minute to sculpt on that. There we go. I can figure out, you know, I probably won't model in joints. If you wanted to do something like that, you could insert some, you know, I could grab a cylinder, for example, and I could put that in there and say, like, yeah, this is where my, you know, this is where my joint's going to be. So then I can say split mass point, and I can duplicate that and put that in areas that, you know, I know that there's going to be a joint. I mentioned that I wanted like a double jointed kind of area. So I want a knee part here and here. So, you know, these are good for like little landmarks, you know, to remind yourself where those joints are going to be. But I don't have to sculpt into those. I can sculpt kind of around them now. And figure out, you know, what are my big mainframe shapes and where would be like piping or tubing or something like that. And this, for example, would probably be two separate pieces. So I can easily either, I can grab this and do a Dynamesh, and then I can say do a group split again and say, okay. And now I just have this one piece that I can kind of work with on this one. I can start kind of thinking about, you know, mobility. You know, you kind of want to give some space for his hips and stuff. I'm trying to think of what, you know, if we're going with certain shape languages, like if we're going to be doing these big, long, you know, if we're going to copy maybe what the shape language is in his face, then, you know, we should have and just kind of see that in other places. So maybe some big hips, like Evangelion style. Got these cool big High tips. Got a lot to like the, you know, silhouette, which is what's gonna make, you know, maybe this part gets even skinnier. It's super skinny. That could be really interesting, right? So playing with the big, medium, small once again, like how thin can you go until it gets like kind of weird, and even then, like weird's kind of good. But maybe medium is going to be his, you know, hit point. So we've got, you know, the big, which is the obvious giant shape on top, small, and then maybe medium for his hips. So we can make sure that these feel a little wider. These arms are kind of getting in my way. I need to hide them. There we go. Yeah, sculpting hard surface is kind of weird. Because for me, eventually, like I'll be cleaning this up with, you know, good proper topology. You could get away with some Z-remesher and do some cool group paneling, which I'll definitely try and see how that looks. But you could also run something like, you know, you could carve in some really big dramatic shape changes to start. You know, maybe something like this. I think maybe there's like a big padding on the front of his, which then maybe hooks around and that. Again, playing with also those rule of thirds, like maybe this should come up a little more. Add more visual interest into the shape. But now I can create like a front plane and polish that. But you can go in and do like a clay polish on this. And kind of sharpen those edges. You can make it even sharper, and you can change the max angle lower or higher depending on, you know, what you're trying to achieve. And you might be able to get some more chunky planes, but then you could go in with the H polish again and smooth out. Because you can see you got like a really sharp line there, which is, you know, kind of what you want. So it's a good way to like just block some stuff in. You can also see that we haven't dynameshed this in a hot minute, so we could also start maybe upping the resolution just a little bit. Not a lot, because again, we're still trying to pick out shapes. Can you pick out a dynamesh? That's interesting. But yeah, just kind of thinking visually what we want to see and what kind of breakup we want to see. So when it comes to, you know, mech design or modeling stuff, it's also about, you know, it's those rule of thirds from the shape as a whole, but then also when you break down to smaller pieces. So you're like, okay, maybe this also has a rule of thirds, and maybe even that has a little rule of thirds and little paneling or like a nut or bolt or something like that. So just trying to find like that visual language can help you a lot in trying to make choices for your mech design. And I'll play a lot with, oops, I don't want that. I want the clay build-up brush. You know, how smooth, maybe something, if this is going to be like really busy, then maybe this area will be super smooth, right? So areas of rest versus areas of detail, things like that also go a really long way when it comes to designing your next stuff. I'm going to add like a big calf. I want to make sure that he's got a cool visually interesting calf can inflate this out. And of course, looking up something like looking up some Gundam reference and stuff like that is also going to be really, really helpful to get an idea of what moves well. They're super good at, looking at these shapes and going, oh, what moves well and what works well, and what's functional, because they have some really crazy designs that are actually pretty dang functional. So it's super cool to always see that stuff, and to reference it is always really helpful. Hello, somebody arts Seraphim. Sorry, the text is always really tiny, so I get worried that I'm not reading it properly. I'll try to fix this shape. I don't want it to be have like 4 planes. Sort of what I want for it. Again, these are going to be obviously remodeled into something a little cleaner. I can use the pinch brush to kind of pinch up on these edges and stuff. And maybe eventually this will also be like 2 pieces or something like that too, and depending on how it bends and moves. I like the idea of it's kind of like shielding and protecting, it's like a big knee pad, protecting all the joints and stuff in there. So again, if you're looking at, silhouette, playing with like maybe big, medium, small, but you can think of things in terms of length and not always like thickness. So like big would be the long shape at the bottom. Medium would probably, be these thighs. And then small is maybe the knee pads. That's in terms of like length. So we can maybe shorten that. So we get a variation of lengths within our design. Another thing I like to do is if I feel like I'm not getting this is getting kind of like blobby and weird, I always find that running a Dynamesh or a Decimation is actually really helpful. So I can pre-process this and have it be like ridiculously low and decimate it really. So that's at 1%. I'll do it even lower if I can get it super low. Yeah, so something like that even. Then I have like these really small points that I can move around and keep really flat. And that kind of helps me block stuff out a little easier. Then you can make like really, really planar choices, which I like. You can see I just move like kind of a point at a time, and you can get some interesting shapes. You know, and maybe I want to eventually. Maybe this is mirrored. Well, I could probably turn on local symmetry and see if I could do a mirror and weld based on that. So I can turn off symmetry, get rid of this guy, delete hidden, and then I could run a mirror and weld with local symmetry turned on and see if I can get something kind of interesting. Ooh, get some doubled. That's kind of cool. And I lost my turned thing off. That could be interesting. Or if I just want to, I can also bring this home to center. And I can, whoops. I can pin the, if I want this side, for example, I can make sure that's in the center, and then I don't need local symmetry. I can just do a mirror and weld and see what I get. Or I can move all these points over. Try to find something cool. So then, yeah, now that I have that, I can move that back into place. So that's another way you can kind of work with stuff. I like sometimes working really, really low res, because it helps with finding like really, really defined planes and shapes. And it makes you make very particular choices with that stuff. So yeah, stuff like this too, we do the same thing. Yeah, see, super low, almost maybe too low. Try like a 1%er. If I can make it. Or just type in 1, Ashley. Just do it easier way. There you go. Yeah, so as you can see, like when you do the grayscale model, you can see that it's really easy to push and pull this stuff to find really defined planes. And that's what I kind of like about this method and staying really, really low res. Is as you move these points, you can see how planar and flat you can get, which just helps with like initial mech building. At least I think so. And then drawing on top of it's really easy. And then if I wanted to also, you know, now that I have these planes, if I needed to go in and detail it, I could use creasing to, you know, up the resolution and then just divide or whatever. But I could also, you know, Z-remesh this now at this shape and it would be nice. Or, you know, I could just Dynamesh it and it'll keep all these, you know, edges, and then I could go in and add some section lines and add whatever it is that I needed to. But yeah, that's also a nice, easy method. Everything's very pointy. We've got this cool kind of shape, so maybe we can add that to there. I've also seen versions where there's kind of like a dual action kind of one that's like overlapping. So we'll play with that. Again, just starting to add some more shapes. You could actually, if you wanted to, you could say pre-process all of it, and it'll run through all of it, and then we'll do a decimate on all of them. So it's actually really easy to take, you know, what we have that's kind of blobby and find some like solidified planes. We can always control Z out of whatever we don't want to decimate, but now I could do a decimation of, you know, one, say decimate all. And it won't do what's invisible, so you don't have to worry about, you know, the tubes, you know, getting decimated. Just hide whatever you don't want to get decimated. See, I can just control Z out of that. But yeah, I think it helps create some very specific little flat planes and stuff, just to, so you're not pushing and trying to build on top of stuff too quickly. I think that's the biggest thing that kind of helped me with this stuff, is you're just focusing on, you know, silhouette. And shapes. Silhouette and shapes. You know, because like, what if this was super flat? That's kind of interesting. Make sure we have a plane for the upper and lower part of his head. I think with these, I'd want to merge them onto the body, but let's see what kind of geo I have that I can work with. Maybe I can just pull these out. Where are my arms? Because I think it'd be cool if this was all kind of like one big shape. We can kind of play with the geo that we have to, you know, kind of like hint at that. Some really interesting stuff happened with you know, because we had some section lines. So if I like raise these up, you can see that you can actually get some little raises and whatnot depending on what you're doing. So I think it just leads to interesting shape design or overlaps or things like that. You can say a lot with a little, and I think that's the biggest thing that I kind of like about initially starting this way. Is because if it looks cool from, you know, a super low res type version, then it should look pretty cool when you plus it up. Now, I've done mechs like this in the past before, where you start with something like this, and then it's really easy to, you know, mesh it in. We just have like a big ball and socket joint. I'll keep that. That's fun. I think these are too thick. I think it's more interesting if these are thinner. And also looking, I think the head could be maybe a little smaller. Because I'm not, you know, someone mentioned that that maybe they're really tiny or something like that. And usually the key to making something feel big is you give it a tinier, the smaller the head, usually the tinier it'll, did it rotate? That's weird. There we go. Usually the bigger the head, it'll feel small. But now it looks like an insect, or it feels like a fly or something. If you give it like really big eyes or things like that, will always make something feel, you know, like it's small. But the smaller you make the head, it'll feel like it's a little bigger. So if we make the head a little smaller, it'll feel like he's a little taller. Yeah, now with the calf, now I can push these planes a lot and see what I can get out of it, which is super fun. So trying to really push the planar feel of these. Again, those little happy accents. Yeah, small head I think looks a lot better too. It's one of those things that, again, like looking from afar, I didn't realize that the head, you know, I think it was that big before. Yeah, let's see how big it was in comparison to the body as we moved around. So that smaller head helps, you know, adjust all those proportions a little bit more, along with making the arms a little slimmer and stuff like that. It's gonna help. I'm gonna bring back my ball and socket joint. There's some stuff that got Dynamesh twice, so just being on the lookout for that stuff. And you can easily take this too and just start adding like booleans to it. If you had something super crazy, you know, planar, you almost don't really need to do a whole lot more than this. But yeah, I'll probably just do another Dynamesh on it at a higher resolution, and then I can start detailing these parts and start doing, you know, some polishing and stuff on the shapes. But yeah, I find this is a, like, you know, if I Dynamesh this now, you'll get a really nice sharp plane right here, which is just easier to warp and work with when it's this low res, in comparison to when it's like kind of a big blobby mess. So I just think that these shapes are more helpful. And I'll probably do some ZSphere hands or something later. But yeah, that's feeling pretty good. You know, and if I feel like I don't want this point, I can pin this, turn off symmetry, move this over, and do a mirror and weld, and I should get... I lied. I think one thing that I could do actually is just hide this, pull this out, and then you can do a... If you go to edge loop, you can go to edge loop, and now I have a midline like that, and then now I can do a mirror and weld. Because I didn't want a little triangle. I wanted, you know, I want a solid thing. So that's just another way to get extra geo in the middle, and now I can kind of round this out or do what I want to do with it. Go play with some stuff on the face. Gotta use your imagination for these things to make sure that, you know. It's very low res, but the moment we get into Dynamesh and stuff, you can start detailing. Okay, so we have some stuff like that. I think I also want to add, because it adds a lot to him as a character, I'm gonna duplicate his body Just solo this. And I'm going to Dynamesh this. Smooth this out. I'm gonna just grab, I just want this area. Lead hidden. I'm just gonna add a cloth. Or just a hint of, you know, there's some sort of hood or something that he has. I like the idea of doing this, you know, it's a mech creature, but he's also like a deserter, like a desert survivor, you know, type character. I think it'd be cool if his hood then turns into basically, you know, some cloth that is stitched on top of his design here. So I think that could be fun. Gonna hint at, you know, it's cloth, something. I want to feel like it's drooping a lot, so maybe it's got like a, I don't know, maybe it hangs down like a lot, so it's like this cool little extra cloth piece or something. That could be cool. Yeah, General Grievous cape. That'd be fun. Trying to decide if maybe it'd be interesting if it was like two pieces of cloth that kind of hang down. So if we want to do that, we could just get rid of this area. Try to move it up apart. There we go. Well, again, I think adding like pieces of cloth in areas will be pretty important. So delete this. I can have this as an area. I can delete hidden. I can Dynamesh that, smooth it out. And just start hinting at, you know, I'll keep things that are, I know I want mechy to be mechy, but now I can start Dynameshing on top of them and saying, you know, I want, you know, this is going to be cloth or whatever. And just start hinting at, you know, the shapes that I want to be cloth. I pictured this whole thing actually going all the way back, but maybe it stops at spot right here. Maybe it covers the whole back. And then even within, you know, this, I could say there's, you know, there's the seam line, but then maybe there's some cool stitching and stuff that happens. Maybe it's stitched to you know, the top of them. And the reference that I have of Chiranthas, or I'm sorry, I never know how to pronounce his name. It's so terrible. I'll have to type it in the box, but Chanthara. I think I've seen some meshes and stuff where he's got like cool shapes that stick out of the mesh. So now we can split them as points. You know, some cool extra detailing where like maybe there's these cool little like mechanical stubs that stick out. And then we can add some cool overlap with that stuff. Oh, thank you. Gnomon just posted the artist that I'm referencing. His stuff is really, really good. Taking big, heavy inspiration from him as an artist for this guy, just because I really like his mech designs. And again, I think it's really important also to note that, you know, this is for fun, and you can say, you know, when you do sculpts and stuff, you can try to do studies or say, you know, I want to try to mimic like why you like an artist. You know, what is it about their art that you find interesting? Why you do this? Thank you. I think that's also really important to do as an artist. It's not about, oh, that's why. There we go. It's not about copying, it's about understanding, you know, especially if it's an artist that you're like, man, I really love his shapes and I love the way he does his XYZ or whatever it is that you like about his work. I think it's important to ask yourself why and, you know, do a study of it. Oh, Twitch doesn't give you a link. At least you can see the name, I think, in the stuff. You can find his stuff on ArtStation. He's also on Instagram. But yeah, figuring out the way one piece of cloth attaches is the way we can figure out how all of them attach. I like that design consistency. And again, I kind of like the idea of this arm in particular, maybe having some more cloth pieces. So I'm going to take this one, I'll duplicate it. And then I think that's the arm piece, and I'll duplicate that one. I'm going to merge these down. It's okay. I'm going to Dynamesh these. And then I can mask where I think I want some cloth. It'd be cool if it was like kind of protecting, something like that. Extract that, say okay. Now I don't need this one anymore. And I can smooth this out. And you can see that it's still very, very, you know, lock-in stage. It's just about getting, I think it's really important to get everything in there so you can see what the relationship with all of it's going to be. I'll probably make like a cool fabric hand or something. Being like, oh yeah, would it be interesting if, you know, this piece later on had like a cool little fabric piece here and then you can see the joints there. I think I'm picturing this part here to be a fabric piece. So I can grab this section, doop, extract that and say cool. I don't need that piece anymore. I can smooth that out. Be like, yeah, this is where I'm gonna put my, you know, it's gonna be some cool fabric going across here. Right, so that's going to give a lot of visual breakup and stuff as well, because then you'll also have fabric, neck, fabric, right? And so finding like a good balance between all of it, I think will be nice. Like maybe I'm thinking maybe just the top part has fabric that actually meshes with this fabric. So maybe this whole shoulder is kind of covered in fabric. But the very end of it is, you know, just neck. So we have like fabric, neck, and then maybe fabric down here, right? So you get like a nice little pattern and breakup. Try to find where this is. Oh, they're okay, cool. So I'm gonna merge these down, say okay. Yeah, Chanthara's work, one, he's been in the industry for a while, so he has a lot of work. So you can just keep scrolling endlessly, and all of it's amazing and beautiful, so. Oh man, that is heavy. We're gonna tone that down. Yeah, I'm not a huge mech designer, so I'm definitely not gonna create something as cool as him. But we're gonna try to make something fun. I think that's part of the fun part of why I would reference him at right now, because I'm like, yeah, how does he create cool shapes? Like I love his shoulders, and his shoulders are usually, you know, pretty fabric-y and stuff. So you're like, yeah, what cool shapes can I add to this to give it, you know, the feel that I like about that artist's work. Be like, yeah, I think it'd be cool if he had like cool little fabric mech shoulders. That'd be pretty fun. We're also gonna go with a bit of a post-apocalyptic vibe too. So later, this fabric stuff, I picture it being pretty grungy and being, you know, maybe it's got lots of cool belts and straps and things, or like weird spikes or license plates on them. Like, who knows what we can come up with. So the shape language is going to feel futuristic, but it's more about, you know, what if this character was built in a different time and now it's having to survive, or it's been, I don't know. I think it'd be fun if like a license plate was stapled on by somebody else, or just something weird. So he's supposed to feel kind of Mad Maxy in the end, but our shape language is supposed to feel also futuristic. So it's that fun futuristic dystopia that we kind of get to play around with and see if there's anything of interest that we can find. Yeah, Synth mentioned Vitaly Bolgrov is a really classic one. I think I have his Kit Bash set. I have to find it, but I'm pretty sure I have it. And I'll probably, chances are I'll probably be using some of that stuff on here, just because again, we're doing this on a stream where I don't always have the most time. So I'll probably be kit bashing a few cool things just here and there to add visual interest and breakup to our character. So yeah, we'll definitely be doing stuff like that. I'll see if I can find it. I'm pretty sure I have it. I think it could be interesting if duplicate this. Is it more fun if it's, I'm wondering if I want to put fabric on the end of it, you know, maybe do some cool stitching or something that goes up the top. I think that could be kind of fun. So it's like protected, you know, it's soft covered. That could be kind of cool. Move his arm down and move this down. This up a little bit. I'm going to hide that because I don't need to see it. But yeah, just trying to create some cool. This thing's arms need to be a little longer. Let's flare these out. I think it'd be fun if these were kind of flared out. Cool. Yeah, I think his silhouette's looking pretty fun. Definitely not what I was expecting to do for our next archetype or character. I'm sure it probably wasn't what you guys were expecting either, but I think that's kind of a good thing. Oh, there's some really fun shapes that kind of accidentally happen back here, so definitely want to keep those. I think that's cool. Yeah, I think this shape works a lot for maybe somehow how it attaches later. Can figure that out. This part's going to be interesting to figure out just because it's kind of going to be like all the stuff I don't want to model. Because it's all just like, you got to add visual interest or maybe some mechanics of how it works. And I'm not a mechanical engineer. And there are people in the industry that are way better at that than I am, for sure. So that'll be fun to come up with some interesting things. We can try to find, you know, maybe there's some cool exoskeletons type stuff that we can look into and find. I'm picturing almost maybe visual interest of like, you know, we mentioned an insect, so it'd be cool to maybe see some stuff extending out to these, you know, back limbs and stuff. So we'll see. I had a another thing here. Oh, there it is. I guess I accidentally deleted it or something. I don't know. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and start sculpting a little bit on the face, so I can, you know, it's just kind of the same thing as, you know, approaching any character, where I want to start sculpting on something. Oh, that's just the neck. I might not even need that piece anymore. We'll see. It'd be interesting to find some hollow and like do some cool little hydraulics or whatever in there. I'm getting distracted like usual. It's always so fun. Can't help it. If I see something, I just gotta do it. You know, kind of a hint of like what would be a sternocleidomastoid muscle, which is the neck muscles. So in a hydraulic, it would be, you know, little pistons or whatever. Anyway, so for the face, this is when I have all these kind of like little planes figured out. Oh, maybe he has little ears. Or whatever this is. A little pointy. I don't know if you'd see it in the overall thing. No, but oh well. But yeah, I think picking out, you know, your most important part and saying, okay, how do I want to, you know, texture this or how do I want to design this? And this is where I can up the resolution of this, you know, and I can run a Dynamesh, and you can see it keeps it really clean. Now what it did do is it actually split it because the groups was still on, which I don't want to do right now. So I can do that. And now I have all these really cool planes to work with, and I can go in and start smoothing some of these out and like kind of picking what planes I want to keep. You know, maybe this is a little too high res, but we'll go with it for now. But you can see how easy it is for me to like kind of just pick some planes that I do like and kind of smooth some things out and keep others. Yeah, it's a good guide to start with. And then again, I want to look at my reference of those sound vibrations and try to see if I can find those in. Trying to see if I can always switch it to. I might switch it to cylinders. Need to be smaller? I'm not sure yet. We'll see. I'll just keep sculpting some scribe lines first. Or I can also take this and push it back and see what that looks like. Start adding some little scribes and maybe what would be some details. And again, always adding like breakup within breakup is what's gonna usually sell mechs the most. The more little breakups you can add, the more realistic or real it'll start to feel. Synth asked about when do I start adding booleans, basically. And I probably wouldn't add booleans until I have a really nice final shape, like I have a final mesh that I'm working with. This is still in just like the sculpting block-in stage. So I probably won't use booleans for a while. Just because, again, booleans are very also depending on, you know, they're interactive with the mesh that you have. So if I'm constantly pushing and pulling these shapes around or like fixing stuff or whatever it is, those booleans aren't going to hold very true until I know for sure that I'm going to keep, you know, the mesh. So it's that type of stuff is always going to be that last detailing phase, which is the kind of the very end. Right now we're not in a detailing phase. I'm more of just playing with, you know, what shapes do I think could, like what could be interesting as far as shapes go. So yeah, I'm adding scribes, but this is nowhere near a final thing. At least not yet. So yeah, just trying to figure out what would be cool. I don't mind that from the front. But maybe his eyes or something like that would be, looks like a little too big. So I'm gonna make him a little smaller. So I'm just gonna fill it in. Again, this is why I don't use like really anything that's substantial yet, because I'm going to be playing a lot with stuff first to get an idea of what I want. I'm like, oh, maybe the eyes are kind of oval and like that instead. Even if he has eyes, if that's what you want to call them. Maybe they're like little weird sensor things. I don't know. In terms of details, it's going a bit cyberpunk like the previous design. Did we do cyberpunk the last? You mean like the previous? Oh, you mean we did like kind of steampunky last one, but this is supposed to be a bit feeling a lot more like futuristic for sure. At least that's the vibe that I would like to go for. You know, later on, a lot of the stuff is going to get, you know, erased away at first, and then we'll go in once it has a high-res mesh and add like some proper booleans. But you can see from afar, that's kind of that's kind of what I want. You know, I'm kind of looking for overall shapes and, you know, breakup. So if I had like a scribe line, you know, like that. You know, what does this top piece look like? And I'll definitely have to collect some more reference of like Gundams or, you know, whatever it is that I kind of want to be referencing, or look at, you know, the way Chanthara like does sectioning, you know, and creates sections from his necks. His stuff is usually pretty solid shapes and then little details on top. So we'll see, you know, sometimes usually less is more, right, with stuff like this. So we'll see what we can come up with. But yeah, just trying to play with the front. Because again, the idea of like a big shape, you know, maybe a medium-sized shape, which would maybe be that shape, and then like a small shape. So just playing with big, medium, small. And then technically, if you want to go even crazier, you go, okay, this is, you know, big shape or medium shape, or has, you know, playing with the rule of thirds, you know, along with this one. And that's how kind of you just keep detailing as you go from primary to secondary and then tertiary. And all those things, you know, you're holding that design idea within that. And then I can pinch these to make them feel a lot sharper. If I wanted to. Although if you pinch it and then you go do a Dynamesh, it'll definitely soften and look a little weird. But you can start doing stuff like that to kind of get, you know, an idea of what this stuff will look like. And get some pretty nice rounded forms or some good angles by using the pinch brush. My hand is starting to hurt. The old tendinitis. Ooh, I want to get. I didn't realize I didn't split these off, so let's split that. Cool. And now we can take this guy, and I'll do the same thing. I'll run a little bit of a higher res Dynamesh. I don't even probably need it to be that crazy. To maybe 24. I can reach it. Yeah, I want 24. Pretty picky. And then again, I'll go in with the. You can change the focal shift on the polish brush, but you can also adjust the alpha, so that way you get a more square alpha. You can change it to a square, so that way you can keep your sharp. The polish stays just a little bit sharper when you do stuff like that. If that's what you're looking to do. You know, now I can make this line a lot sharper. Cynthia's asking what kind of tablet I use. A really crappy one. I use the not the Wacom Bamboo. I think it's called the Wacom Pro. It's the really tiny one. It's this one. It's super small. So yeah, it's like as big. I like it because I can take it to school and I can travel around with it because I work from a laptop, so it's easier to put in a backpack. So I don't have like a fancy one. I just have a simple one. But there are some stuff that I wish I had, because it's kind of like your eye gets disconnected from your hand when you're working that way, right, with a tablet. So sometimes creating really clean lines is kind of annoying, but that's where lazy mouse and stuff like that can be helpful. But yeah, I keep it really simple. And then for drawing, you guys might notice it as I draw on my iPad, so I don't draw on my laptop, but I sculpt on my laptop and on my tablet. You can also do really easy things, like I could mask this, so I could lasso this area. And then I can invert this, and I can even just use the move tool and just move it down. Create some visual interest. Just to start getting and breaking up like some ideas, you can do that really quickly and seeing where you want to do that. But yeah, with the lassos, it's really easy to draw out, little shapes and then go, okay, I'll, move that out or round that out. Or add like a little, whatever that is, visual interest. I think that looks terrible because that's just an example. But yeah, I like the smallness of it. Man, my hand's killing me right now. I'm pushing too hard. I need to be better about not doing that. But yeah, I think the portability is really nice. I had a Cintiq for a long time. Someone's asked if I sculpted with a Cintiq. I had the really big one, so after sculpting or doing something all day, my shoulder would get super tired because you're drawing and sculpting with your whole arm, and that can be kind of challenging or kind of annoying sometimes, depending on what you're doing. So yeah, that would be the part where I was like, yeah, switch to a small tablet. There's pros and cons to both. There's times where I wish I had a big tablet so I could draw like really clean lines without having to do like lazy mouse and stuff because it's easier for my brain. But yeah, to each their own. I like the portability. I like working fast. I don't even use the full tablet range. I only use like a really small portion of it. Yeah, right arm's like super toned if you're, sketching all day. I gotta switch to the other side or just do like, lift some weights or whatever on the other side while you're sculpting. But yeah, your shoulder will get super tired. I feel like that's probably pretty common for like tons of artists. Most of the stuff that I just did is covered by fabric, so that's fun, but that's okay. Kind of find a fun groove to get into. And again, looking at my reference of what this could be. And eventually these will be probably pretty separate little flaps, I'm picturing maybe drawing some little hinges or something like that on there so they look like they can move. So I'm gonna go try a space mouse. I haven't tried a space mouse. What's a space mouse? I don't know what that is. Is it like an ergonomic mouse? It's like really nice and clean for your, nice and comfy for your hand. I wish I had an ergonomic mouse, but I usually just use my pen. I'll have to look up all that fun stuff. I think detail-wise, again, you know, I'm picturing we'll have like a big area of rest, kind of, with our fabric. You know, I kind of wanted to feel like it's very tight on him, so we should have like cool little tiny details. But then in the back, you know, maybe there's some cool. That eventually, though, maybe it'll be some cool overlapping, like these will eventually overlap on top of one another. That could be kind of interesting. I do always think that stacking and adding, you know, that kind of stuff will add a lot of visual interest to your piece if you can make stuff feel like it's laying on top of one another and not just, you know, one big shape. Kind of depends though. In the down here, we'll definitely be adding like some, I don't know, some sort of cool like framework or something, you know? So maybe we'll have some cool framework going around. There'll be little engine pockets, little vents or fans going there. A bunch of like scaffolding with some pipes. I'm just picturing a lot of scaffolding back here. We'll do some stuff like that. That'll then kind of attach to, you know, our main hull. I'll look at the front here. A lot of fabric pieces in the front, but I think adding some cool I think this definitely needs to, we got a little thinned out so we can thicken this up. We could also play with this having more breakup, you know, like you can play with this having a little hole or something like that in it. So it has a, maybe like a visual pocket. Lower that. I can pull this out because it's Dynamesh, so it doesn't matter. You can see like the little ball and socket joint or something in there. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but I'll pretty much go around this whole model, basically doing this. I want 32. I said 32, and it didn't, and it lied to me. Ooh, speaking of, I should save this. Let's save it, guys. I have caps lock on every time. I love it. I'm just gonna keep it. That's just gonna be my thing. I accidentally hit it because I'm constantly hitting shift, you know, to smooth and stuff. So I think every now and then, obviously, I'm hitting caps lock. So then I look like I'm screaming into my computer. This will be where a bunch of hydraulics and things and whatever lives. All the greebleness that we're just going to throw in some kit bash parts and do some stuff with. Some pipes and things. Whatever it may be. This piece will definitely be technically like thinner, so you know, it's going to be butted up like that, but I mean, I can mask it right now and move that in. And then good old handy dandy pinch brush will help you kind of clean up anything. I think it's too busy, so I'm trying to rework and find something more just a little more simple, I think. I almost erased all my detail, but that's okay. You can also hold shift and draw out straighter lines. I'll probably do later when it's more important. I think it's just more about getting the shapes first. We have made pretty good progress today. Not bad. A lot of it, there's a long way to go, and I'll probably, you know, like usual, I'll be working on this in my spare time this week. Trying to get it to a good stage. But we'll see. We'll see how far, because a lot of this too, I don't want to bore everybody with having to do retopping and stuff. It's not very exciting for people, although comment if you would really like to see that. I can demo it for like a piece, but you know, I think overall I'd rather focus on the more fun stuff. But we can try as hard as we can to make sure that, you know, we can do something like Z-remesher and use creasing and see how far we can get without having to, you know, completely retop. In reality, for like a game asset or for a final thing, I would probably like to do that. But because we're streaming and stuff, my goal is gonna be to try to get there quicker than that. Because it is a lot of there's a lot of parts, and hard surfacing is always a real treat. So we'll see how it goes. Well, I'm glad that you don't mind seeing stuff and seeing everything. I like to show people, you know, steps of the progress. So, you know, with something like this, I could probably show you guys how I would retop this to make it look really cool and nice, and then do booleans. But depending on how complicated the rest of him gets, then, you know, I don't want every stream to be like, okay, we're gonna retop this part, because it's just not that fun. So maybe we'll do a few different methodologies. The only issue with that, of course, is, you know, when you model something for real, you want to make sure that you have a good consistency with how you're treating all your parts. So you just want to make sure that, you know, we're going to be doing different methodologies for stuff, but in reality, you would want to make sure that, you know, you treat them all the same, because each one's going to give you, you know, slightly different results. So that's all I really have to say about that. I'm going to go ahead and save this guy. I'm actually surprised I stayed in basic material. Put fast shader. I kind of like seeing it. Basic material is a little dark for me usually. But yeah, there we go. So definitely blocked in our whole silhouette. Our silhouette's feeling pretty cool and fun from the front and from the side. And then we've got pretty much all of our blocking in. We're gonna add tons of cool stuff to add, and we'll see how far I can get with progress this week. But for now, I'm gonna sign off, and you guys enjoy the rest of your night and whatnots. I hope you enjoyed this little block out of our mech. Very different from the other 2 characters that we've done. So with that, I will say thanks for joining in, and I will catch you guys next time. So bye!